Dear friend, there are mornings when you wake with the sense that something tried to approach you in the night, only to quietly retreat before you could grasp it. A sound without shape, a figure without a name, or a voice echoing as if from the basement of the soul you step out of sleep, as if from a smoke-filled room, carrying the scent of an unopened message. I do not ask what you dreamed. I ask, how have you listened to your dream? Dreams are not the trivial chatter of a weary mind. They are messengers, crossing the invisible border between consciousness and the unconscious, between the individual and the collective unconscious. But all too often, their letters are discarded, not because you don't care, but because you do not understand the language in which they are written. I have likened the unconscious to a deep sea, where each dream surfaces like a silver fish, slipping away before it can be caught. But it is not the dream that flees, it is your ego, trained to distrust what is vague. Our culture loves light, logic, definition. But the soul does not speak in white light. The soul speaks in symbols, in images, in metaphors, in darkness, tinged with the gold of alchemy. Perhaps you have dreamed of falling, not because you are weak. It is a letter from the self saying you are clinging to a false structure. Perhaps you see an old house, not nostalgia, but a reminder that your soul has rooms you've never opened. Yet who among us pauses long enough to ask, what is this dream saying to me? The silence of a dream is a voice yet to be translated, and the messenger, if not welcomed, will sit at the door of your soul, waiting for you to open it. In my years of analytical work, I have realized this. People do not forget their dreams. They fear looking at them. For dreams never lie, and they never flatter you. They send you what you need, not what you want. So, dear friend, if you have ever felt empty upon waking, if your soul feels like a dust-covered room, I ask you one simple thing. Tonight, before you sleep, place a blank sheet of paper by your bed. Perhaps, just perhaps, the messenger will come again. And this time, you will read it. Have you ever spoken to a snake? Not with words, but with a glance, with a shiver at the nape of your neck, with the intuition that something stirs in the belly of your earth. In a dream, a snake can be both danger and medicine, both death and healing. It is never merely an animal, it is a symbol. It is the language the soul uses to write its letters. When the messenger from the soul arrives, they do not wear the cloak of words, but the guise of images. A door that won't open, a lost child, a forest shrouded in mist. They do not explain, they evoke. A symbol does not reason like philosophy, it resonates like music. In a dream, you may find yourself chased. That image may stem from the shadow, the rejected part of your psyche. It could be suppressed anger, an unacknowledged potential, a fear of abandonment. But you cannot negotiate with the shadow. Through reason, you must let it appear. Listen to its distorted voice, like a stranger in a familiar house. I once wrote, the dream is a small, hidden door in the deepest and most intimate sanctum of the soul, opening into that primeval cosmic night. Only when we cease judging symbols as ominous or nonsensical and begin to live with them, converse with them, invite them in as honored guests. Only then do we begin to understand. It is not the dream that speaks a strange tongue, but we who have forgotten that primal language. Like the hieroglyphs on an Egyptian stone wall, the symbols in dreams carry layers of meaning that cannot be read in a single way. A horse in a farmer's dream means something entirely different from a horse in the dream of a city child. Each symbol is unique, yet also universal, for it connects you to the collective unconscious, to memories that were never yours alone, yet flow in your veins like an underground river. Dear friend, do not try to decode a dream as if it were a mathematical puzzle. Let it guide you like music with melody, rhythm, and silences. Do not ask, is it right or wrong? Ask, why do I need to see this now in my life? For when the messenger knocks, what they bring is not advice, but a shard of a mirror, reflecting a part of your soul you never knew you had. As you venture deeper into the realm of dreams, you cease to be a mere observer of scattered images. You become a character in your own fairy tale, where the boundary between I and it melts like morning mist seeping into the roots of a tree. A dream is not merely an image, it is an inner stage where archetypes, ancient forms, dwelling in the collective unconscious, step forth and play their roles in the tragedy and song of your life. Dear friend, imagine you are walking through a forest. Each tree here bears the marks of an ancient time, where a hero, wounded, continues their journey, where an anima, the inner feminine, sings by a well, where an old wise man scatters breadcrumbs as signs to guide the way. They are all you and yet not you. This is the forest of archetypes, of voices that lived before you were born. A young woman once told me of a dream in which she became a bird, flying over a ruined city. When I asked what it felt like, she said, both terrified and relieved, as if I was finally free of myself. In that dream, I recognized the symbol of the soul emerging the image of the anima as a bird. In alchemy, the soul is the albedo, the pure substance after dissolution, the soft voice guiding the pilgrim through the dark night. Dreams do not merely reflect the present, they are an invisible map of the inner journey you have yet to fully realize. When you dream of being lost, it is not simply fear, it may be an invitation to enter the departure phase of the hero's journey. Jung pointed out that this journey, departure, initiation, return, is not just the story of Odysseus or Buddha, but a pattern alive in each of us, reenacted every time we undergo a spiritual transformation. In a dream, you may encounter a roaring lion, a lost father, or a bridge that leads nowhere. Each image is a feather fallen from the clouds of symbol. They may be the self calling you to integration, the animus dialoguing with the rejected femininity, the shadow whispering from the wasteland of what you've denied. You do not need to interpret them like a student cramming for an exam. You need to dialogue with sincerity. The messenger, the dream, does not want you to merely read the letter, it wants you to feel it, live in it, as if each symbol were a living character. If you dream of a girl leading you through an old house, do not rush to label her as the ideal lover. Ask, is she a part of me trying to guide the way? perhaps the anima, the feminine soul you've grown distant from. Or if you see an old man handing you a key, pause, it may be the Senex, the ancient sage within you, holding the wisdom of ancestral souls. You are living a life that dreams are trying to complete. The characters in your dreams are not mere shadows, they are embodiments of archetypes, of the collective, unconscious, speaking in a language your soul has known since its dawn. Each image, each movement in a dream is a page from the book of the soul, and you are tracing its lines not with eyes, but with intuition. Imagine carrying an oil lamp through that dream forest. Each time you dare ask a symbol, who are you? The light spreads wider. But remember, this light does not destroy the darkness. It makes the darkness alive, sacred, intimate. That is where the soul begins to tell its story, not as a prophet, but as a mother singing a lullaby in the night. By now, you are no longer merely a wanderer in the misty forest of dreams, where archetypes whisper the eternal story of the soul. Now you begin to transform within the very symbols you once only observed. You become the bird, the flame, the mirror, or the cloaked pilgrim. You are swallowed by the dream as if into the belly of a mythic whale, where transformation is inevitable, like night turning into dawn. I recall a patient who said, I dreamed I was a candle burning in a cold room. My light illuminated silent figures standing around me, but I couldn't move. I could only burn and keep burning. I stayed silent. No need to decode immediately. In that image, I saw both quiet pain and the potential for transformation. For the candle is an alchemical symbol of inner fire, spiritual light, but also sacrifice. She had become the symbol, no longer separate from it. That dream was not just a story. It was a ritual where the soul offers its flame to illuminate its own shadow. When dreams begin to transform you, you enter what Jung called the conjunctio, the integration of opposites. Here, darkness is no longer an enemy, but a forgotten lover, masculine and feminine, conscious and unconscious. Reason and instinct all seek union through the symbolic images of dreams. And you, like an alchemist, stir the raw material of the soul in the ethanol of sleep. The dream is no longer just a messenger. It becomes an initiatory rite. Like ancient alchemists pouring sulfur and mercury together to await a reaction, you let symbols collide within, not analyzing them from afar. Jung wrote that individuation comes not from understanding theory, but from living the symbol, and dreams are where that life unfolds. Like a sacred theater where you are actor, audience, and unconscious playwright. You may dream of dying. Do not fear. Death in dreams, as Jung analyzed in many cases, is not a harbinger of doom, but the prelude to rebirth. A dream of being buried may be the negredo of alchemy, the absolute darkness where the ego dissolves so a higher form can emerge. You may see yourself turning to earth, drowned by floods, or dissolving into nothingness. And in that state, the image of a child, a young dragon, A golden egg may appear. This is the profound law of dreams. Only when you dare to be destroyed in symbol can you be reborn in light. A middle-aged man once told me he dreamed of being hung upside down on a tree, blood dripping to the ground, snakes gathering at his feet. He was terrified. I was not. I saw a replica of Odin on Yggdrasil, or the Hanged Man of Tarot. It was an ancient image of surrender and soul transformation, an essential stage in the journey of individuation. Dear friend, this is no longer the stage for decoding dreams as if they were puzzles. This is the moment to let them perform their right upon you. You may feel broken, alien, as if losing your old form. But remember, as a caterpillar dissolves in its cocoon to become a butterfly, you are entering the distillation of the soul. Jung called this separating from the persona, the social mask, to begin living from the self. The true center of the soul. Dreams do not come for you to control them. They come to invite you to dissolve into them, to let the soul be distilled through layers of symbol. And as the alchemist said, solve et coagula, dissolve and coagulate. In the dissolution of old images, a new light crystallizes from the depths of the unconscious, where the self calls you home. When you have journeyed deep through the fog of the unconscious, where symbols melt into one another like mercury and sulfur in the alchemical furnace, something strange begins to happen. The dream, the nameless messenger, at first no longer stands outside you. It returns, but this time it takes the form of a companion, no longer hidden behind a mask of chaos. It stands there, naked, delicate, radiant like light, reflected from a morning dewdrop. I once wrote, the self is not only the center, but the totality of the soul. In this journey, the dream is the extended arm of the self, like an angel in scripture, bringing prophecy to those about to be called. And you, who once listened to dreams as distant echoes, now begin to realize the dream is you whispering to yourself from another dimension. It is your deepest essence, using the language of symbols to help you remember what consciousness has forgotten. At this point, a sacred movement begins in the mind. You may dream of meeting a strange figure, an old sage, a mysterious girl leading you through a forest, a child handing you a glowing stone. These figures do not represent something simple. They are archetypes, the forms the collective unconscious uses to paint the face of the self. The old man is the senex, the teacher. The girl is the anima, the soul. The child is the pur aeternus, the beginning and the end. Not someone else, but you in your depths, calling to you. A young student once came to me, eyes alight, saying he dreamed of a dragon lying in a crypt, guarding a book of fire, and he dared not approach. I smiled. You have seen yourself, I said, but you are not yet brave enough to receive its gift. That dragon fears. Ancient was not an enemy. It was the guardian of sacred knowledge. And that book, not written in words, was the story of his soul, waiting to be read. How long has it been since you dared to read your own story? At this stage, the dream is no longer a mirror, but a window to the soul. When you are quiet enough, attentive enough, humble enough, it speaks in a wordless language. an image, a feeling, a movement. A woman dreamed of entering a ruined church where statues wept. She woke with an unnamed sorrow. I told her to write down her dreams each night. Over 3 months, the dreams began to answer each other. The weeping statues turned to a stream, then a sky. Dreams do not merely tell stories, they heal. At this level, the self is no longer just a psychological concept. It is a living entity, the God within, as I once called it. And the dream is its liturgy. When you dream of being swallowed by a monster, only to be reborn in a new body, you are entering the rite of death and rebirth. When you see yourself falling into an abyss yet hovering in the sky, you are passing through the liminal state, where the old ego dissolves and the sacred self begins to take shape. You are no longer the analyzer of dreams. You are the one living within them, like a pilgrim who has walked enough circles in the cathedral's labyrinths. You reach the center where there is only light, silence, and wholeness. But you do not stop there, for Jung never believed the ultimate goal was to retreat into mysticism. No, the dream fulfills its purpose only when it returns to consciousness and becomes living action. I call this returning to the world. After meeting the self in dreams, you cannot live as before. You must rewrite your life, your actions, decisions, relationships, even the way you breathe begin to bear the imprint of the dream. A man once dreamed of holding an oil lamp on a battlefield, walking past bodies. He asked me its meaning. I replied, "You are the light bearer, not to illuminate others' paths, but to keep from losing yourself amid desolation." Do you see? The dream is the messenger, but you are the one who must read the letter and respond, not with words, but with your life. Dreams do not come to make you more mystical, but to make you live more truly in alignment with the call from the unconscious center. Now, look back. Has the dream you once thought chaotic become ordered, like an abstract symphony full of harmony? Have you stopped asking, "Why did I dream this?" and begun asking, "How must I live after this dream?" That is when you are no longer the sleeper, but the one awake in the darkness, like Prometheus bringing fire from the divine to the human realm. When the messenger has arrived and the letter has been opened in silence, you face a reality no book can prepare you for. It is the moment when a dream is no longer something that happens when I sleep, but a language I live every day, like one who has learned the mother tongue of the soul. You begin to realize the dream continues, even with eyes open. I once told a patient, the dreams of the night are only a small part of the whole symbol. Every feeling, every action in your day is also a fragment from the unconscious. This means the journey does not end in dreams. It continues in your choices, glances, words, and silences, just as the alchemist does not stop when he glimpses gold in the furnace. He must craft it into reality. From here, you begin to live in symbolic wakefulness. You see a dove perched on your window in the morning, and instead of saying, "It's just a bird," you listen to it as a message. Is the soul saying, "Be at peace. Return to your essence." You pass a ruined church and your heart tightens. You do not walk by. Repose. listening to what memory from your depths is being stirred. This is the attitude of one who has received a dream. I call this the symbolic attitude, not superstition, not fantasy, but living with reverence for the unconscious, as if everything you see could be a mirror reflecting what moves deep within. In psychology and alchemy, I liken this to the alchemical work. As you refine gold outwardly, you transform inwardly when you live with symbols. You enter a sacred living ritual where daily life becomes a mystical journey. A woman came to me saying she often dreamed of a black river flowing through an ancient city, and she dared not enter the water. I told her, then by day, find that river in your own mind. When tears well up, when you want to speak, but hold back, that is the river. Try stepping into it with a small action. She went home, and the next day told me she wrote a letter to her late father, something she had held in her heart for 20 years. She wept as she wrote, and that night she dreamed she swam in the river, and the sky was bright. You see, dreams do not only lead you to mystery, they lead you back to truth. And truth is not a rational notion, but a meaningful, soulful action. You are courageous. Once a symbol is enacted, you forgive someone, a dream image is set free. And then something strange happens. The dreams begin to change. They grow clearer, brighter. You are no longer chased, but begin to see yourself as the one holding the torch, leading the way from dreams of panic to dreams of wonder, from fragmented symbols to a whole image. You enter a church, embrace a child, meet an elder, gaze at light streaming through a stone arch. It is not the unconscious improving, it is you becoming more integrated. The unconscious does not change. You have changed. I often call this the stage of the mandala, when dreams begin to draw circles, spirals, interwoven patterns. The mandala is not art. It is a symbol of wholeness, the image of the self as it nears full consciousness in the Red Book. I drew swirling circles like universes, not because I was an artist, but because my soul could no longer speak in words. I had to draw, to listen to something deeper than any language, and you will too. Perhaps you will write a dream journal each morning and see the dreams weave into a larger story. Perhaps you will create, paint, meditate, or simply walk in silence to keep hearing the letter. Every image you receive from dreams or life is a letter of the soul, writing your own epic. At this stage, I often tell my students and patients, befriend your dreams. Ask each morning, what did you say to me yesterday? And each night, what do you need me to hear today? For dreams, dear friend, never stop speaking. They only stop being heard. And when you truly listen, not with reason, but with your life, you enter the stage of individuation, where you no longer live by the world's expectations, but by the call of the self. The dream is no longer a guest, it is a companion, no longer a messenger, but you writing letters to yourself each night, each day, through every conscious action. And when that happens, I can say, you have begun to live your life When one lives with dreams long enough, a profound transformation arises. The dream is no longer a reaction, a message to decode, but becomes the path itself. I call this the way of the pilgrimage, a form of living where the individual and the symbol merge, where the unconscious and conscious cease to conflict and walk together. Dear friend, picture this. You no longer ask the dream, what does it mean? But ask yourself, am I living what that dream is? That is when you leave the role of observer to become the character in your own personal myth. I wrote in the Red Book, the way is within us, not outside. That way begins where the unconscious sends its letters, but ends only when you bring the soul's language into reality. When you no longer live to conform, but to become whole. The dream now is a living mandala, not only appearing at night, but taking shape in the day. The way you choose truth over pretense is a symbol. The way you forgive someone who hurt you is a symbolic act. The way you face fear is a rite of rebirth. At this stage, I often see dreams take on the imagery of mythic journeys, climbing mountains, crossing forests, passing through narrow gates. The dreamer often encounters figures like the wise sage, the priestess, the knight, the serpent, the phoenix. These are not strange. They are the oldest language the soul uses to mark transformation. Remember, the sacred always comes in ordinary forms. A father embracing his child after years apart is a symbol of the self, returning to the inner child. A woman dreaming of rebirth in fire is a symbol of the anima rising from the ashes of reason. These symbols do not speak in words, but in movements of mind and behavior. Here, a danger also arises, the risk of mythologizing oneself. Some, after knowing the symbol, fall into the trap of spiritual inflation. They think they are enlightened when they are only intoxicated by the first light. I often warn, symbols are not to make you feel higher than others, but to see deeper within yourself. This stage demands absolute humility. Like the alchemist who knows gold is not for display but for healing. Like the pilgrim who knows the destination is not the temple, but each conscious step you do not need to tell anyone. I am living symbolically. The symbol will speak through you, through your peaceful gaze, your consistency of word and deed, your gentleness with the wounded, and your firmness in guarding your boundaries. A student once asked me, how do I know I'm living my dream rightly? I replied, you will feel time flow differently. Everything slows down, not because you are lazy, but because you are no longer rushed. You are no longer pushed by the outside, but led from within. That is the sign when you live from the center, not the periphery. In the pilgrimage of dreams, you do not avoid suffering. On the contrary, you pass through it like Christ carrying the cross, like Buddha passing through the four gates, like Orpheus descending to Hades, for suffering is the path to the primal. No one reaches the self without passing through their own brokenness. No one comes to light without crossing the shadow. But then, one morning you wake with no remarkable dream, only a sense of peace, not elation, not gloom, like a still lake, like a forest after rain. And you realize Perhaps you no longer need grand dreams, for life has become the dream you wish to live fully